Hi, I'm Logan, and I just spent a year in Japan as an assistant language teacher for English in Japanese public, elementary, and middle schools. Schools in Japan are similar to schools in the US in many ways, but I also realized there are a lot of differences. So here are the 17 differences between school in the US and Japan. When I was a kid, I was always excited for back-to-school time in the fall. First day of school picture time. Okay, Mom. Okay, now do a silly face. But in Japan, back to school time is actually in the spring. The school year begins in April with a summer break from July to the end of August. Winter break is from the end of December to the beginning of January, and the third trimester is from January to March. Graduation is in March, and then there's a week or so of spring break before the new school year starts in April. In Japan, the cherry blossoms blooming in spring represents a fresh start and a new school year. Another thing that's different is the grade levels. In Japan, elementary school is 1st through 6th grade, middle school is 7th through 9th grade, and high school is 10th through 12th grade. So if you're a 7th grade middle school student, it would be called first year middle school student, and then second year middle school student, and third year middle school student. And same for high school, they call it first, second, and third year. When I was in school in the US, elementary school was kindergarten through 5th grade, middle school was 6th through 8th grade, and high school was 9th through 12th grade. So one thing that's different is in Japan, high school is 3 years, but in America, I think it's usually 4 years. In Japanese middle schools, teachers change classrooms every period, and students have one classroom that they stay in for most of their classes. Each middle school teacher in Japan has a specialized subject. For example, there's one math teacher that goes to each grade level to teach every day. I think this is different than American middle schools, but it also depends on the school. In my middle school in the US, for each grade level there was either one main teacher that teaches all of the subjects, or one year I had one teacher that teaches math and science, and then a different teacher for social studies and English. Excuse me, I'm Sally Harry in the 3rd grade. I came to talk to Miss Grapes. May I enter? Yes, come in. Since in Japan, the classroom belongs to the students, the teacher's desk is located in the teacher's room. It's a room where the teachers sit whenever they're not teaching classes. Students often knock on the door of the teacher's room if there's a teacher they need to talk to. And for me, since I was an ALT teaching in Japan, I was very used to hearing the greetings that the students had to say every time they came to the teacher's room. To me, it sounds so polite, and I could never imagine American kids talking like that. In American schools, I remember each teacher has their own classroom, and their desk is in that classroom. And the teacher would be in the classroom if they don't have classes to teach. There probably was a teacher's room in the US, but it was more like a room with a fridge and a sink where teachers could eat lunch if they want. In Japan, the 3rd year middle school students have to take entrance exams to get accepted to high school. Once they're in their 3rd year of middle school, they spend a lot of time studying for these tests. In the US, we didn't have to take high school entrance exams for public high schools, only for private high schools. Most students in the US don't take entrance exams for high school. Some middle school classrooms in Japan start their class with about 30 seconds of silence. One student keeps a timer and the other students are silent and close their eyes for 30 seconds. I was never able to ask about the meaning of this exercise, but to me it seems kind of like meditation and calming yourself down so that you'll be ready to tackle the next lesson. It seems like a good idea that students in the US could benefit from too. Let's begin. Number 7. Before each class starts in Japanese schools, the students and teachers do greetings. Everyone usually stands up and bows and does a short greeting before each class. They do the same at the end of each class, and the class hasn't ended until the closing greetings are done. Not just classroom greetings, but in the hallways, the students are taught to properly greet their teachers when they pass them. So in the morning they would say good morning, and in the afternoon they would say good afternoon in Japanese. In schools in the US, we don't really do such formal things like this. There's no specific way to begin or end a class, and if you see a teacher in the hallway, you might just say hi or nothing at all, depending on the student. And that's it for number 7. What's the answer to number 8? Miss Logan, please. Yes. In Japan, I notice when students are called on in class, they usually stand up, push in their chair, and stand behind their chair before they answer the question. To a US student, it might seem time-consuming and unnecessarily formal. What's the answer to number 8? Logan. Students in the US would slouch in their chairs and still answer questions. But slouching in your chair is also something you would probably get in trouble for in a Japanese school. Where I lived in Japan, it was cold in the winter. Not so cold that it snowed, but it was pretty cold. And it was really hot and humid in the summer, but none of the schools or even my apartment had central heating or air conditioning. Most of the teachers' rooms had air conditioners and a heater for when the weather got pretty bad, but none of the classrooms had an air conditioner. In the summer, they had fans in the classroom, and in the winter, they had a kerosene heater. But even when it was cold, they would open the windows in between classes to air it out, and it would get pretty cold. And if you're not right next to the fan or heater, it's also pretty cold. In my school in the US, we never really needed a heater or air conditioner, I think. But in other parts of the US, with the weather changes, I'm pretty sure they have central heating and air conditioning in schools, so that the students aren't freezing or really hot and they can focus on other things like learning. In Japan, the elementary school students don't wear uniforms, but the middle school students do. And the uniforms differ a bit in the winter and summer. In elementary school, they do have matching backpacks though. Every student has to buy one of those elementary school backpacks that cost a lot of money, but they last through all 6 years of elementary school. Just like houses in Japan, students have to take off their outdoor shoes for school. Even me, as a teacher, I had to bring school shoes for school every day. Near the door, there are shoe lockers where they can put their outdoor shoes and change into their school shoes. And they also have special shoes just for the gym to protect the floor of the gym. Yeah, in the US, we don't change our shoes for school, so that's a pretty big difference. In Japanese schools, there's a set-aside time for cleaning on most days. The kids and teachers all clean for about 15 minutes. They don't have a janitor like schools in the US because they do all of the cleaning themselves. School lunch. I made a separate video about school lunch. I'll leave the link in the description box below, but basically, Every student in Japan eats school lunch every day. The students help set up the lunch and they eat in the classroom. When I was in school in the US, a lot of kids ate this for lunch. And school lunch was kind of gross and not very healthy. A lot of students brought their own lunches. And we didn't eat in the classroom unless it was a rainy day. A lot of schools have cafeterias to eat lunch in, and at my school we mostly ate outside. Number 14 is toothbrushing. After eating lunch at school, all the students and teachers brush their teeth. In the US, we didn't brush our teeth at school. Do you remember middle school dances? Well, that's one thing that Japanese students don't really experience. They don't have dances in high school either. But they do have some other fun school events every year. Some big school events that happen in Japan every year are Culture Festival and Sports Day. Some schools in the US have an event similar to Sports Day, but we have it on a weekday during school, and it's not as big of an event as it is in Japan. Parents and people in the community come to watch the sports day. The students are divided into 2 teams and compete to see which team wins. And my favorite part of the day is lunchtime, when the parents bring homemade bento lunch boxes for their children to enjoy. In the US, I walk to school, but I think it's common for people to have their parents drive them, or for younger kids, their parents walk with them to school if they do walk. Some students probably take school buses too. In Japan, people in my town walked or rode a bike to school. Some students might take a bus, but I think that's because it's a more rural area. It was interesting to see so many students walk alone to school in the morning, even as young as first graders. I think in bigger city areas, students take the train alone to school too. In the US, joining a sports team or some kind of club was something extra that students would sign up for. In Japan, every student joins some kind of club. It could be a sports team, martial arts, or something else. Where I was living in Japan, most students did a sport like volleyball or tennis. They spend a lot of time at school practicing for sports every day. Let me know what you think in the comments about the differences between school in the US and Japan. Also, if you went to school in another country, let me know what your school was like. And if you've been in Japanese or American schools and had a different experience, every school and area is different, so leave a comment about that too if you noticed something different. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you really liked it, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.